Hello, Michael Davis again, Spanish and estate planning lawyer. We specialize in probate and inheritance, and we've been handling cases for expats all over Spain since 1996. With these line of videos we call nightmare inheritance, estate planning from hell. Today we're going to talk about the two worst cases that we saw during 2022, the most expensive mistakes, and how you can avoid it happening to you. So the first one we're going to talk about is due to a badly written will. So what's happened here is these clients of ours that are coming now to go to probate on a will that their dad had signed. Their dad on his will left his estate in Spain to 4 people, with one person receiving just 10% of the estate. The person receiving the 10% of the estate was his eldest son, with whom he had basically lost contact, but he, at the moment of making will, and sort of the supposition here, he sort of thought that he felt guilty, so he was going to leave that son with at least a small percentage. So he left him 10%, leaving 30% each to the other three children. Okay, so what happened here? Well, this son that had been called to inherit, nobody can get hold of him. He doesn't want to know. He's angry because he's only got 10%. He has plenty of money, so he's just not interested. But he does not want to renounce the estate, and he will not accept the estate. Now, this in Spain can be a mega problem. In fact, we've had this case on the table since the beginning of last year, and we still haven't managed to resolve this. I've given some details, but it's been with the permission of the client who tell me that they want to avoid it happening to anybody else. If you want to see how bad the situation is of an estate being left to a group of people, and what happens if one of them doesn't accept the estate or doesn't renounce the estate either, take a look at the other video that you'll find at the end of this one. You can click on the video. What happens if a joint beneficiary refuses to accept or to renounce the estate? How difficult can things get for the other beneficiaries? So the long and short of this is that it causes a big problem, okay? And you want to avoid this. So the lesson to learn from this, which I think should have been explained by the lawyer that handled the will, is that if you haven't had a close relationship with one of the beneficiaries for many years, and you've got doubts about what they want to do or whatever, what crosses your mind? Oh, well, I'll leave something, and if he doesn't accept it, well, it doesn't matter. No, it does matter. It will cause an absolute mess for the other beneficiaries. So typical examples where you don't want to leave someone a percentage, it would be, for example, an estranged child, someone that you haven't been in contact for a long time, or one of the children, if he's got serious grievances with his brothers and sisters, and that causes problems. What you can do, if you really want to leave that person something, what you do is, instead of leaving him a percentage of the estate, you do an individualized legacy. So, for example, you name the other children, the one that are going to do things correctly, they name the beneficiary, but you can leave somebody a specific legacy. So, for example, you say, I leave a legacy to my son, John, of €30,000, and everything else in Spain goes to my 3 children, Peter, Mary, and Peter, Mary, and Kevin, for example. Okay, in that way, the naming of the legacy will not stop the other beneficiaries from accepting the estate. So that's it in a nutshell for that one. Now, the other problem that we've seen this year, most expensive mistake, was during an inheritance procedure. Now, In our inheritance from hell that we did last year, this is one of the, when we talked about the three worst mistakes that we'd seen the previous year for inheritance and for wills. This one's a repeat. So this we saw the year before, and now we see it again in another case. And what is it? Well, it's whoever valued the estate for the purpose of inheritance tax did so without thinking about the effect of that valuation on future capital gains tax when those beneficiaries sell the property, because there's a trade-off. If you value the inheritance, for example, you inherit an asset of 400,000 euro, and you go and value it at 200,000 euro on the inheritance deed when you declare that amount for inheritance, but when you go to sell, you're going to pay capital gains tax based on the difference between the sales price and the price at which you inherited for. Now, why are we seeing so many of these problems? Well, very simple, because up to a few years ago, inheritance tax was very high, and capital gains tax was sometimes cheaper than inheritance tax, or in any case, similar. What's happened is that because in Andalusia, the exemptions for inheritance are so high, and basically spouse and children pay no inheritance tax or close to nothing, a lawyer that doesn't deal with a lot of inheritance, when he goes to value, he's still working on the old custom of it's good to put a low value on the inheritance deed because my clients will pay less inheritance tax. But of course, if you've got €1 million exemption and you're receiving a villa of 500,000 euro, and 500,000 euro, and you just, you go through probate, and the solicitor says, well, let's value this asset, and he goes and he values it at 300,000. Then the beneficiaries, there's no inheritance tax saving anyway, because he wouldn't have paid anything on 500,000 or on 300,000 because we've got €1 million exempt. And then we go and sell the property a few months later for 500,000 euro. Guess what? If you valued it at 300,000 euro and you're selling for 500,000 euro, you're a non-resident. Now you're going to pay just under 20% capital gains tax. So 20% on 200,000, that's 40,000 euro that you've literally thrown in the bin. So this particular example was somebody that had received a villa with a value of 700,000 euro, and we know that was the value because it's since been sold for 700,000 euro. And when they declared the inheritance, they simply declared it at 400,000 euro. They didn't pay any inheritance tax, which looked really good, but in reality, if they declared 700,000 euro, they also would not have paid any inheritance tax. And now they've sold for 700,000 euro, and they paid 19% capital gains tax. So just under 20, so that's 300. That's just under 60,000 euro thrown in the bin, simply because they hadn't taken into consideration the trade-off between inheritance tax values and capital gains tax on the sale. This is very important. In a few years' time, this mistake won't happen because everyone will have caught up with the idea that when there is no inheritance tax to pay because you're under the exempt amounts, there is absolutely no point in keeping the values low. That in the old days, it may have sort of been a neutral decision or even favorable to undervalue, because the inheritance tax, depending on the relationship of the beneficiary and the deceased, could have actually have been more than capital gains tax. But nowadays, when there's no inheritance tax, in many cases, you must not undervalue the property. Make sure you get a good value on it. Still, there may be some cases where it's a group 4 inheriting, or someone that's not a close relationship to the deceased. In those cases, the inheritance tax levels are very high, and then the trade-off is different. But if you're the spouse, or the children, or the grandchildren receiving assets here in Andalusia, where we've got the first €1 million exemption, 99% deduction on the rest, don't undervalue on the inheritance deed. Well, those are our the two worst mistakes from the that we saw last year. The second one, clearly a mistake. And the first one in relation to that will, it depends a bit on what the testator told the lawyer, because he may not have made it very clear to the lawyer that that child was not close relate, wasn't closely related, but you never know exactly how the conversation went. But if you're going to leave a small percentage to someone, either a small percentage of the estate or even a larger percentage, but it's going to go to someone that you've got doubts about whether they're going to go ahead and accept or not, don't go down the route of leaving them a percentage of the estate, in other words, naming them an heir. Instead, give them a legacy. Then they're considered legatarios, and it does not hold up the estate. It's the same for them if they accept it. It's the same difference. In other words, there wouldn't be any problem. They'll accept their legado instead of being an heir, and it doesn't make any difference. But it would not hold up the estate because they are not an heir of the estate, in which case all of them have to sign unless there's a judge's order to sort the problem out. I hope you found the video useful. If you did, hit the subscribe button. If you want to see the full explanation on what happens if a co-executor, a co-beneficiary does not accept the estate in Spain, you can watch this other video that we've posted above. Thank you for watching.